Slow and steady was their game plan, and slow and steady brought big results. I assume Kuro pick up the MVP here, was so accurate, razor sharp, didn't miss a fish on screen from what I could see. That was very clutch from him, a champion that definitely has big moments and down moments. The Fizz next to an Orianna. Other picks like this, KT had a really strong comp. It was a comp that could definitely have taken the game in the early game, but slow and steady, Afreeca didn't allow them to blow open the game, make it purely about poke and siege. Instead, it was about the team fights, and that was what Afreeca's bread and butter after pick and ban.
Yeah. This was one of the last engagements. A lot of these fights just took a really long time, right? There were so many tanky frontliners that eventually did go down after a long time, even score flashing away from this one to eventually go down to 2 of the carries, and then 5v4. Afreeca able to win another very extended team fight to take the win.
By the end, if you're unsure why the fights were so one-sided, UCAL and Def together can't kill Gragas over the course of maybe 5 seconds. It'll take 10 or 15 seconds to kill one person. But Yasuo, with his 50% armor penetration with Conqueror, he will get his man far faster. So in those long extended fights you alluded to, there was only going to be one team winning. UCAL tried to skip away, but no. The Fizz coming in. Good understanding here by Kuro. This is just a prediction, but a smart one by the Afreeca mid lane.
Yeah, Afreeca they've always been applauded for their fantastic drafting, and I feel like the draft here in Game 1 was really stellar. They had that mix of sustained damage, the CC, the burst out of the Fizz, and even the Yasuo to eventually come in, and the Gragas pick definitely did so much work for Afreeca. Look at that damage for Keen in the top lane.
Just look at the damage numbers in general. They have every person above 13,000. The Morgana doing more than the Fizz. Look at the enemy team. KT have 2 members who are just frontliners. Unfortunately, the Zoe Ezreal damage is empty poke rather than actually taking down the members of Afreeca. Shared damage from Afreeca. Shared identity to wait for team fights. Nobody stepped out of line, got too frisky, got too excited, and got taken down to allow KT to snowball. The snowball never happened. See who picks up the MVP here. I would have said Kuro. He's going to be aiming picking up the MVP with some solid team fighting on the Yasuo.
Yep, 2-0 on 5. He definitely had a very clean game on the Yasuo. Wasn't doing much early on in the game, but when it did matter, he showed up with some really, really nice play. The wind walls were really on point against the Zoe and the Ezreal. Definitely shut down a lot of their damage, and he did that frontline damage onto the Trundle more often than not. So, shout out to him. I kind of would have agreed with the Kuro one as well. I feel like Mowgli had a decent game. Even
I would have been Kuro Mowgli. Keen was decent,
yeah.
But yeah, a bit strange for me with the aiming choice.
The team performance, I'd say. It was definitely hard to pick one MVP. But either way, guys, it looks like we're ready to go into game number 2's pick and ban. So let's start that off right now.
Guys are wondering how this went in the first round robin, because of course we are at the second time meetings for all the teams for the rest of the season. It was Afreeca 2-1. First game was a really notable one. You remember this one, Valdez, where Kuro had the highest DPM on Anivia we've ever seen, with everyone else chilling. In his ultimate, that was a good indication of Afreeca's ability to pull out smart draft picks that can really impress and also make their opponents just be set up to lose. And speaking of setup, look at this blue side first ban. Goodbye Kindred first ban on the blue side. Red side bans likely to stay the same most games. We've already alluded to it being the Aatrox, the Taliyah, and the Nocturne, but with a Rakan ban, KT is saying we don't want to deal with a funnel or necessarily Tucson's famous Rakan.
It's really interesting. We were talking about 3 red side bans that needed to happen. That means that probably Taliyah or Nocturne will come through, but Afreeca decide to go ahead and ban the Taliyah, which opens up KT to just take away that Nocturne. So Afreeca doing a little bit of the work for the red team this time around.
Makes you wonder if they just want Swain first pick. There'll be a big departure from the previous draft where Swain went through picks and bans. The only other first pick you can think of is, say, a Sejuani, if you really desperately want to pick it up with other meta junglers taken away. So weird a champion can go from not picked at all to first pick, but Swain is so maneuverable as a flex pick. But look at this, they're going to make a last-second change. Yeah. They're going to go for the Zoe first pick instead, even though UCAL couldn't get big results from it in game number 1.
Yeah, I was going to say there's part of the reason, even in game number 1, that you can see why Zoe has fallen down the draft a little bit, right? You can draft into stuff that counters the Zoe, mid laners that, go aggressive against it, or even a Galio to go defensive against it and just stop that laning phase. But they decide to switch it up. They put their faith in Kuro's Zoe, and KT says, thank you very much. We'll take the Swain.
And KT can get a huge lead on the draft if they get Mundo at Yukal's pick and ban away some of the laning choices against it, because then you have Mundo, Shen, Swain, and how's Zoe ever going to be able to puncture through those champions unless Afreeca snowball? So I wonder what that means for the Mundo priority. Mundo's made it through the second round here. Again, a lot of teams would take it just to deny it away, because the reality of the red side second round of bans could make it pretty unanswerable by Afreeca. But we'll see how Afreeca read this situation. Will they just be going for a similar siege comp to what we saw KT unable to play to a victory in game number 1?
Well, I mean, Aiming doesn't play all that much Ezreal. He has one game on it, he lost. More of a Xayah, Vlad, Yasuo type of player. We'll see if they go ahead and pick that up now, or if they do just want to take something else. Okay, he is going to go ahead and jump onto the Ezreal once again. We'll see if he has better results this time around.
You know how we talk about picking the reverse matchup and smashing? We were calling about how Chovy turned around the matchup against BDD on Zoe Aurelia. What does it mean if you turn around the draft you just beat? Is a fun thing to think about, but Afreeca sticking with what worked for KT. I'd love to see the Mundo here from Smer, but we won't see it at this pick. Could have taken Mundo, banned away Darius, and set up just the strongest front line to trivialize the damage from the Ezreal and the Zoe. They're not going to do it yet, but the Yasuo would be Yukal most likely, you would think, but a deft Yasuo would be an intriguing thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Swain for Yukal, maybe deft jumping onto something a bit newer for himself. Hasn't played the Yasuo just yet. Very mechanically intense champion, I guess you can say. Hard to just pick that one off the ground, but I like the pick. The Mundo is definitely very tanky in the front line, but you get the wind wall. Worked very well against Zoe and Ezreal in game number 1. Definitely a bit of a head scratcher for me. Not sure about Afreeca, but they've shown before that they can turn drafts around and just show genius through the drafting phase. So I'm waiting to see that genius. Show me your genius, Afreeca. That's what I want to say.
Looking at solo rank in terms of the last 7 days, most recent game for Deft is Yasuo, but only game across 2 challenger accounts. To me, it doesn't necessarily scream off the page a Deft champion, but I would have said the same thing about Mordekaiser, and it's been one of the best picks for KT Rolster so far this season. So we'll hold our judgment. They're screaming we want to play Mundo with the next pick in the draft. Let's see if Afreeca's going to ban it.
Probably would have to see the Mundo ban. I don't think you want to give that one over for free, but then maybe KT just take a page out of the Afreeca book and take Gragas. But hold that thought. We see the Camille get banned. And Deft is, he's a known troller in the pick and ban. I don't think we're going to be seeing Hecarim anytime soon.
If you squint a little bit, it does kind of look like a scary alpaca in the Hecarim splash, as we're just going and showing some stuff that we're not going to see. A Gragas we could see, and it's another champion that worked very well against Ezreal and Zoe in game number 1, but they're going to skip over the Mundo, maybe because Keen is such an apt player on the Gragas, but hasn't shown much on the Mundo. This is what we see in EU, by the way, just zooming in. We could actually see Rumble into Gragas. People in Europe have been loving the 1v1 matchup there. I think it's risky. Looking at the jungle pick, an old favorite of Mowgli is going to be the Zac to show a bit of backline threat, but usually you like Zac against Zoe and Ezreal. Against a team like this, you might be able to hit a couple of members, but you certainly won't be kidnapping anyone you feel too good about.
Pretty much anyone is going to be okay about getting into the back line. Perhaps the Yasuo wouldn't be too happy about it. Could get burst down pretty fast. But yeah, I mean, the Mundo's free. Might as well pick it up here for your top lane. The Gragas, with the cask, you pop him away when he tries to dive your turret. It's not too bad into the Mundo, but in terms of tier, definitely liking the Mundo. Thinking about another pick here. It looks like we will have the Gnar coming through. So, in fact, probably going to be the Gragas into the jungle, you would assume.
That's pretty hype, actually. It scores famous jungle Gragas. Probably our best Gragas player in Korea. Score and Ambition have always been kings of that particular champion. 2015 Worlds was something that was brought up in the Invent Global Score article I mentioned that I was reading earlier today, and that was when his Gragas, even in the losses for KT, was unbelievable. So cool to see Score back on the Gragas. We just saw Afreeca on a similar draft to what KT has this game. We've definitely got the shoes on the other foot. If Afreeca are able to win with this draft, which is pretty low damage, which is very much about the siege, and then in team fights, you really have to get all the damage onto one person to get kills, because Zoe and Ezreal are the entire damage load. That would say a lot about Afreeca versus KT when it comes to their title candidacy. The KT Rolster, they need to follow the Afreeca playstyle, and sadly for the viewers, that means slow and steady. If this game goes long, you have to like what KT have drafted.
Yep, definitely are switching the shoes up. It feels weird, but it's what's going to happen, I suppose. You know, blue-red side, we're still trying to figure out 8.13 and how the drafting meta does work out. And I suppose it does make sense in that way that you do see these compositions drafted against each other. But the Gnar coming through once again for Smeb up in the top lane. It almost feels like one of those new champions because we haven't seen it in so long.
Old counterpick into the Mundo, seen once this season from Sword into the Mundo. Can go play the Ruin King, can go Rage Blade to find ways to shred down that health bar. But you're right, only second game of the season on the Gnar.
Foregoing the Kennen this time around. Did not want to see that one. I'm not a big fan of that pick. The Gnar definitely going to be a bit nicer. But the countdown has started. Let's jump into game number 2 for KT versus Afreeca right now.
It's already a hot summer day here in Korea, and we also have so many fans packing in to see KT versus Afreeca, full stands. Long line for the bathrooms between games. Let me know that definitely no empty seats here. So probably even hotter here than the 32 degrees Celsius I was seeing quoted for today.
We've had 32 for, I think, 3 days in a row now. It's definitely one where you leave your AC on when you're in the house.
I don't have AC, Valdez.
You just live a life of misery, Papa Smithy.
That's me!
You sit there with your little hand fan, and that's all you got.
No, no, no. You see, I'm much smarter. I make myself have a 6-day work schedule because my work air conditioning is much cheaper.
That's true. Don't have to pay for that one. Just trying to stay out of the house, I suppose. That's,
if you think about
it's been working for you so far.
They are paying me to vibrate my mouth and use their air conditioning. Think about that.
I mean,
genius, right?
I never looked at it that way, Papa Smithy. I'm glad you made me see the light because it makes so much sense.
Interesting thing about Korea is that we do have, it won't be interesting to many people, but something that's interesting to me is that you'll know this, for electricity bills, which the air conditioning runs on, the more you use it, the more it costs. So it's cheaper if you don't use it much, and actually really expensive if you run your air conditioner every day.
Yeah, it's like an exponential system. Once you pass a certain tier,
you're being fleeced. Whoa.
The rates just skyrocket. It gets pretty insane. Korea generally pretty good about energy saving. They have a really good recycling system too. I wasn't used to it when I first got here, but you recycle pretty much everything. So we're talking paper, styrofoam, plastic, glass, and you separate everything into different bags, and also food trash as well, which is something, you know, new to me in America. You just throw everything into the one trash. Maybe you recycle, maybe you don't. Some families don't. We used to, but Korea, they just separate everything into different, you know, levels and systems. And
which bag do you put the King Zone Game 3 draft into, Valdez?
That would be the blue one. Just throw them in the blue bag.
Which one's? What's that one? Is that general trash?
General trash, yeah. The blue one. You know, that was pretty trash. It's hard not to call trash trash. Sometimes you try to avoid it as a caster, but when you see that kind of draft, you see Griffin's Game 2 draft.
That one was probably worse, but
trash.
that was a special kind. That was definitely the food trash.
That was the food trash, yeah. Something you don't want to eat, so you just throw it away. Just get that out of your face. Generally, it smells a little bit more than the other trash as well, the food trash. Just think about it. I'm sure a lot of you guys aren't acquainted with the food trash, but I've had some pretty smelly food trashes in my time here in Korea.
Let's stop saying trash. We're not talking about double lift or NA, so it's not the right time.
Hey, he used to cast here.
That's true.
I had that one famous cast with him on the finals, 2012 summer. It was a good day.
So let me tell you a story about this.
Okay.
I was bored. I don't know where I found the time to be bored, as Deft is out of mana and not going to kill anyone. But I was trying to find VODs of LCK, I guess, Champions Summer 2012. That was the outdoor final, COG EU versus Frost. All I could find is a highlight of the best 5 plays from that particular final with English commentary, and you were on English commentary and also narrating the top 5 plays. Explain.
You know, I used to work at Azubu before they were Azubu TV, before they were a streaming service. They had an office out here. They used to do articles. They used to do some streaming videos, you know, just gaming content in general, right? And they had me usually do the top 5 plays. They called it Playmakers.
Okay.
From Azubu, as they were the sponsors of the tournament at the time. And yeah, the finals, we did the Playmakers thing. I was always the one who narrated the Playmakers and stuff. So I was casting the finals, and then I made the video. It's out there somewhere. Maybe sometime we can tweet it out. But so it was a long time ago. League of Legends looked really different, and my casting was... It kind of sounded like I was on drugs. I was way too calm for everything. I just barely even raised my voice. It was really funny.
And people accuse you of that now, so that shows how much has changed. Interesting fact, the reason why I bring it up is your co-casters were Mole Trap, a name that some StarCraft fans will know, and Double Lift as your other co-caster, and this was pre-Monty Dollar. So technically, you actually outrank the rest of us over here.
I know. I'm the most OG of the OGs here in Korea. I guess Moletrap and Torch were the first, the original OGs. As they started it, they brought me in as kind of a fill-in because Torch had his brother's wedding, I think, so they needed a fill-in for the finals, so they brought me in like halfway through the season. And yeah, we had a bunch of different names on the desk during that season. We had Lokodoko show up for a bit of it, you know, to do a bit of side analysis casting, I should say, with me. And yeah, Double Lift on the finals was also another big one.
Can I run something by you?
Yeah.
It's in my head, it doesn't sound great, so I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
You're talking about how he gave up casting the final to go to his brother's wedding.
Yeah.
Is it wrong that I probably wouldn't, and that I'd probably do the final over going to my brother's wedding?
I mean, where it stands right now for you, Papa Smithy, LCK is more important than your brother. So I would definitely take the finals over your brother's wedding. Although you've done so many at this point, it might be getting a little bit boring. You know, your brother's wedding will probably only happen once.
Thankfully, it has already happened as well, so it's not a current conundrum.
Okay. There's definitely 2 sides to the story, 2 different ways that you can...
It doesn't mean that I don't love my brother. It's just I cast all these damn games, 90 best of 3s, and then missing the final. What was the point, you know? If I did all that, what was the point?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the fans would be too happy about Valdez and Valdez 2 on the finals. Or, you know, Achilleos and Moletrap on the finals, because pretty much no one knows or can tell the difference between any of the play-by-plays here in Korea. It's Papa Smithy and that other guy who screams a lot and makes jokes, I guess.
But in general, they appreciate the cast. So theoretically, while you are interchangeable, it sounds like you're all good at your job.
I mean, we're all good enough so that people are not complaining. That's kind of what we've landed on here in Korea.
Well, Mowgli might land on a gank here. If he can crack these heads together, this could actually work.
He's level 6. I mean, if he lands it, it would definitely be nice. But with the lane pushing, decide against it for now, even with that long engage range from the Zac. We knew that this game was going to turn out this way. I mean, game 1 was the same thing, just the teams were swapped, and so we knew that we could take some time to just sit back and talk about casting for a bit.
We've learned now in our new stopwatch meta that as long as you start talking about the game roughly around 8 minutes, there might be some stopwatches blown. That's action, right?
You would think that action would want to happen before the stopwatches get online, but I guess the teams have different plans for us, as everybody's just farming. The lanes look exactly as you would expect them to, right? The Gnar is a bit ahead here of the Mundo, who's just farming with his cleaver, and not getting in range.
And we should return to our drafting win conditions of, just like Afreeca on the red side in game 1, KT should win team fights pretty handedly in terms of the fact that they have a strong front line, they have mixed damage, they have more damage than Afreeca, and Afreeca are better on the siege, so onus on Afreeca to make things happen earlier, therefore the game being non-interactive and both teams rocking up 5v5 with 40,000 gold does suit KT. So don't worry, KT fans, you're winning at the moment.
You're winning for now. You may not want to get too excited. We had that a little bit too much. Seems like it's okay on the international stage. A lot of people were getting really excited for KT over there, and they played just fine. They actually played really good. Some of the best here for the Korea teams, for sure. But on the domestic stage, you don't want to get excited. Trying to come in here for a gank. Mowgli's going to miss everything.
Still the most action we've had all game.
Yep. He tried to gank, right? In terms of Spo TV stats, he's now 0-1 for gankings here in this game.
Poor effort.
Well, yeah, we haven't had much happening, Papa.
But what's happening with you? The fans know what I've been up to. I'm on air basically every day. What's happening in Valdez land?
I mean, I've been playing a lot of solo queue. I've been climbing the ranks of Plat and then falling down again. Korea Plat is actually really hard. I was talking to LS. He was saying how it's like, you know, Plat 2 is mid-diamond NA, right? They were saying, hey, you could just play on the laggy NA servers. You'll probably get into diamond at least. So they made me feel good. They might have been lying to me. But either way, I'm just playing a lot of solo queue, watching Rift Rivals. You know, it's been fun. Not much else. Not too much other action in my life during the last 2 weeks.
Would you say this game is a metaphor for your life?
For the last 2 weeks, yeah. Just watching these style of games over at Rift Rivals. There was a bit more action there, the Chinese team.
Oh, action, Valdez!
A lot more aggressive. I mean, you say action, but okay, we might actually have a little bit here as the Rift Herald is online and getting extremely low. Kuro trying to poke him out here, and it looks like KT is going to be able to take it out. That last Paddle Star is not going to net them the kill, and that will just go over to score. As KT says, no action for you, actually. We'll just take the Rift Herald and back away.
Other than a minion genocide, the first significant death is to the Rift Herald. Rest in peace, Geraldine. You will be missed. Rift Herald might be enough to get some more of that gold onto KT, and we already mentioned that KT Rolster are the team that is scaling. Speaking of scaling, that's actually 5 Rift Scuttles and the Herald. Score can be a jerk and actually show off the Rift Herald summon animation because Mundo doesn't have an interrupt, so he doesn't care about him. That means first turret, and somehow Afreeca seem to have opted into a losing game.
You know, I feel like the one position in League of Legends where it's really hard to get someone who's consistent and just really strong for a long period of time is the jungle position. And Score, I mean, he proves it again, right? 5-0 Scuttle Crabs. He gets the objective, the first one on the map. And he's currently winning ahead of Mowgli, even though the CS is very comparable in terms of the objectives, definitely going over to KT. So they got that in their pocket at least.
KT gonna just disengage bot side. They already got an objective top, so no reason to go any further. We saw Score have a similar performance at Rift Rivals on the Kindred, you'll remember, where he took double Scuttle and was also taking every mark whenever it was possible. I normally expect this level of domination in the Zac versus Gragas matchup, but Gragas a more flexible champion as the Zac has to use his AoE clearing ability as his movement ability, so isn't able to steal with the relative impunity that Gragas is. Speaking of Gragas, he and Mowgli having a bit of a chat.
Yeah, you say chat because I doubt anyone's going to die here, although the kidnap does come in. Score is getting pretty low, is forced to flash away. Really nice cast to get everybody out of position. Now Def going to land up into his ultimate here. He's going to stopwatch the first of the game. Shen getting really low is going to get devoured here, but he's got a stopwatch of his own. Def getting really low too, is trying to do the damage. A big knockup by Yukao in the background. Is able to get that first blood over to the Gnar. The Mundo, though, with a double kill in the back line. In the meanwhile, though, Gnar and Yasuo defeating the backline of the enemy team. There's kind of the divers doing their work into the backlines, and now Keen and Mowgli looking to run away, as it looks like UCal just going to go into the bot lane and push.
Ask for action, he shall receive. Here comes Smeb. He even has to play the Ruin King already.
Wow.
Goodbye, Mundo. He built for lanes, and he kills you quickly. And the big story here is UCal picking up a stack of kills and kill involvements, some minions as well. Very extended replay. Ye of little faith, Valdez. You thought no one would die. We knew it would be an atrocity. In this one, so many stopwatches and flashes available because of the non-interactive nature of the earlier game. But KT have the teamfight comp. Deft controls space, does a lot of AoE damage. Yasuo, ready to go, but frustrated at the start. But look at this self-made Q over the wall. Hits 3 members, cleaned up by UCal, and pushes the lane. Just a dunking by the Yasuo.
Meanwhile, Keen, he eats an incredible amount of damage from the Swain, but after the Demon Flare is popped, it's like, well, we don't really have much follow-up, as Mata and Deft and Score got taken out by the Mundo. Or actually, I guess it was only 2 of them that did go down, but Mata and Deft, that bot lane being taken out by the Mundo, is trying to do his best. But now we look at the game situation. You have a 3-0 Gnar, who actually picks up Swifties afterwards. So he's looking to be very aggressive after the Blade of the Ruin King hit.
If you think of the build we see Darius go, it's frequently Trinity Force with Swifties for I want to kill Mundo. The Swiftness boots is because Mundo's only disengages Cleaver, and it's quite big initial slow. So you just want to stay in auto-attack range more with the Swiftness boots. So he just wants to dunk lane hard of Valdez, and you can see with Keen's positioning, he's a very sad boy standing next to his inner turret, not being able to pick up minions unless the big Gnar decides that he'll give them up.
Yeah, most farm in the game, most kills in the game. We'll go over to the Gnar in the top lane as Smeb. He has found some consistency, at least, onto the Gnar this time around. We'll see if he can actually push that into winning the lane. Certainly, for a while, until that Mundo does hit level 16, he's going to be just dominating that top lane.
A lot of damage dealt by the Gnar. It's the Mundo matchup, so we're not going to be too surprised by that. But Deft, basically in that last fight, put out the great majority of the 5,000 damage. KT with the scaling teamfight comp, they're in position. But Afreeca Freecs know if they don't start going soon, they may never go at all.
Just a half-hearted attempt at a steal, you can call it, by aiming. Had his ultimate available, but just decides to go for the Mystic shots. It's not effective, as Score is able to pick up that Cloud Drake for his team. KT now about 2,000 gold ahead, looking to roll this into something even bigger. We'll see what Afreeca want to do. They have a nice push down on the bottom side and a good rotation here by the Zac and the Zoe, which means that at least they'll get the turret after all this.
Good map movement from Afreeca. They didn't have the ward set up, but they had the numbers, so they're able to push up and abuse back timers to pick up their first objective of the game. Will we even see them pick up a Scuttle Crab, though? Zac versus the Scuttle Crab is going awfully for the side of the Afreeca Freecs. It is spawning on bottom side, and Zac is camping it. Zac is saying, I will pick up one.
Well, it's 6-0 for you guys who are new to the Spo TV broadcast. It's up at the top next to the turret indicator. It's been the Score show in the jungle, that's for sure. But now they're looking for Kuro. There's the knock-up. Super easy. 1, 2, 3. And that's that combination you're always looking for between the Gragas and the Yasuo. Just has Mata there for some help. Look at Smeb coming from behind, just threatening the dive. They're not going to go for it. They spot the Zac, but another kill picked up here for KT.
Best moment of the game. Poetry in motion on that engage. Mowgli, he's looking for a big Q, but he's not going to find one. Score waited for the portal jump to be down. Hits the ult. Beautifully done by KT. On what has been a very slow-moving game, you have to sit back and appreciate just how crisp that engage was from KT.
Yeah. Clean and easy was the name of the game there on that engage. Now they're looking for a bit of a more dirty tactic, some sneaky bush tactics down in the bottom side.
It's not very sneaky if he pulls his blade.
Well, yeah. Mata has to ruin everything. No fun for him. He's all about the honorable League of Legends.
Speaking of no fun, the Gnar is just dunking on Mundo as you'd expect. Watch this though. Sees the portal jump. Here comes Score. Couldn't have been any nicer. You, Carl, say, why didn't you hold on to your ult? Of course I was going to hit the Q like I did last time, but otherwise just beautiful from the side of KT.
Yep. Just another thing to put into the back of the mind. Actually, nice pull into the trouble bubble here. They're going to look to burst down the Gnar. Look at that damage from the Paddle Star and the Cleaver. They do take him out, and unfortunately, Smeb with that big lead gets caught in the jungle.
A big bounty, too. 600 gold goes to the Mundo. Maybe a Warden's Mail or a Bramble Vest to try to attack the 1v1 matchup that he's struggling in. KT may have the draft we like, but we're talking about the gameplay in terms of a normal game with low mistakes. KT known for their mistakes, Valdez. They can't afford to have too many more moments like that.
Got to be careful, especially when you're playing against a Zoe and a Zac in the enemy jungle. They can engage from so far away, even when you can't see them at all. They might just be halfway down the mid lane and they're going to take you out. So just Smeb, that's another thing to put in the back of his mind. I was talking about how Zoe Kuro's going to have to be a little bit safer with his portal jump after his gank. Smeb himself going to have to be careful about how he invades the enemy jungle from here on out.
One of my biggest criticisms of Smeb this year is he has too many very easily solvable mistakes. If we're thinking of a tennis analogy, it'd be unforced errors. He doesn't need to be there. He doesn't need to be collapsing. The team is already winning. It wasn't a desperation play. It was just a misplay. In KT walk into the mid lane. They are still in a fantastic spot given where the comps are at and the gold that's rolling in this game. Honestly, big mistakes like that are what Afreeca need to find a lifeline back in game number 2.
They certainly are. In terms of, we were talking about in the draft, the idea of Zoe versus Swain for the first pick. And I wanted to see it come into action in the game, Is the Zoe actually worth it for the first pick? Afreeca hovered Swain for 10-15 seconds, and they switched it at the last second to the Zoe. May come back to bite them. The Zoe dying twice so far, and the Swain looking pretty good. Is down on farm in the bottom lane. Perhaps they thought, hey, we can draft Ezreal and deal with the Swain in the bottom lane in that way instead of, drafting the Swain in terms of, being scared of the counter picks in the draft, but we'll see how it does move along. It's definitely one of my things to look forward to as the game moves on.
In a different meta, you can understand Afreeca's draft, first pick Zoe. You see a Swain, you say, okay, let's outrange the Swain and go for the poke, but the ability to flex champions all over the Rift, and the Yasuo is a very decent matchup into the Zoe to make things work in a significant way, and the drafts have repeated themselves in amusing fashion game 1 into game 2. Afreeca on the push, though, in 2 different lanes. We see KT collapsing in mid.
You notice what aiming can do. I mean, we saw Genji doing this at the beginning of summer. We were talking about how it was genius. It was so smart. You just open up Ezreal to be this gigantic lane bully after the laning phase ends because he can just poke. He's got red buff, and the Tahm Kench sits right behind him with cleanse, and he says, you're never going to kill us. I can always get away. I have cleanse flash. I'm just going to devour the Ezreal if you do. Try to engage onto him. So aiming just sits here. He pokes the turret by himself. The Tahm Kench sits right next to him. And KT, they have all this engaged, but really no way to get on top of them.
Not yet, Valdez, but if Gragas joins, things can change. Looking at the tail of the tape in the first 21 minutes, KT turning it on around 11 minutes and finding the only meaningful lead of the game. Of course, the scale is much smaller than some of our other games because it's been relative inaction for the first 11 minutes when we talked about just the most rubbish. Actually, literally,
it was
about
fun,
rubbish, though.
Lots of different types of trash. But, yeah. Just waiting here in this one. Definitely more action this time around. This KT has the more aggressive comp, I suppose you can say. Afreeca had to get aggressive, but the team that has this comp is just refusing to get aggressive, and so we haven't seen it from them. KT looking to take another Drake. This time it's not going to be Mountain or Cloud. It's actually an Inferno, which just opens up that Yasuo to be even more oppressive as the game goes on.
Tipping into the big items, Infinity Edge next for the Yasuo. The Zonia is going to be there for zone control from Def. How you ever kill these members as Kuro and aiming is a question we never saw KT be able to answer in game number 1 with a similar draft. So KT feeling great about where they're at. Don't want to make any more significant mistakes. We'll have to look at their ward line to see if they can keep themselves honest with good control ward vision. And then the Baron start is always possible, even though they probably want the Gnar there since he's actually the highest Baron damage dealer they have on this side.
Yukao getting a little bit frustrated, trying to push down the lane, see what he can see as Looks like Afreeca and Mowgli have been able to pick up 2 Scuttle Crabs, but Scuttle Crab number 9 is going to go over to KT this time around. Now should be 7-2 in that indicator over to him. In terms of looking at the levels, Score and Mowgli are both level 12, so the XP hasn't really shown up in that manner.
Aiming hasn't gone for the double tier build this game. Went for Blade of the Ruin King. Wants to fight earlier. I approve of that. I think it makes sense to look for the power now, and the Blade of the Ruin King gets insane value out of the KT lineup.
Yeah. This is their moment to pull off the strategy with the Tahm Kench Ezreal. They really want to take down that outer mid lane turret. It's extremely low. Most of that damage was done actually by aiming in this mid-game phase. You guys can see the health of that turret up in the top right. We'll see if they actually get a chance, because after they realized what was happening, KT just parked the Swain in the mid lane and just allowed Deft to farm up and stop that turret from going down.
If KT can side lane Yasuo into an Infinity Edge before the outer mid lane turret goes up, that's what victory smells like, Valdez. So,
is that what that smell was?
It is.
I feel like it's just beginning to waft its way into the studio for KT. Did
you say waft?
Yeah.
It's waft. Come on.
It's waft
over
in America.
It's wafting over. It's not wafting over, you daft person, you.
Sorry, bruv.
Governor. Well, Afreeca finally got things in order here. They got the turret, baby.
Yep, they finally did it. They took out this outer mid lane turret, and yeah, they just grouped up as 5. KT wasn't really ready to go for it. And go for the defense, I should say. And so they do take it. Another red buff will go over to aiming. And we return to this mid lane. I feel like Afreeca is handling this game a little bit better than KT did with the draft. How do you feel about that, Papa?
I think when it comes to the itemization, I prefer not going double tier, because by the time the double tier comes together, you've probably lost the game already. But it all hinges around here. I really do think KT have a significant lead on paper, and we saw pretty much the videotape of it in game number 1. But KT also makes more critical errors than our other top teams. So I'm waiting to see if Afreeca can either set up a huge outplay or see a KT mistake. Speaking of outplays.
There it is, the Devour comes in, but the 2 people are mixed up in it. Tucson is going to have that stopwatch, and he gets the great help. And look at the back line. We have Keen going nuts there. Mowgli going to help him out too. And Death all alone, trying to 1v2, is nearly able to do it, but he is going to go down in the end, gets punished for it. And look at Keen. Nobody can take him out just yet. That ultimate is going to finally tick out as he runs out of time, but Afreeca able to win the fight 2-0 in their favor.
We may criticize Tucson's Tahm Kench, but that might be the biggest Tahm Kench play I have ever seen. When you see the replay, you will fully understand it. But Tucson, normally it's about the engages on Rakan. That was sick. Afreeca Freecs, it had to be now, as KT's scaling only gets better for team fights. They don't find a big victory, but they do find something.
That was a massive play. I just want to get into the replay for that one. You're exactly right. Tucson, they even end up picking up the MVP for a play like that. He was right on the ball. It was just split-second response time out of him to save Aiming's life.
So Score finds his moment, goes in. Watch what happens here. Catches him out of the air, and then during zone use, the auto spit comes out and lives through all of it with the Grey Health. Insane stuff, and that meant that Aiming could do damage. They take out Deft in the back line. That should have been a one-team fight, but just as easily as Score set it up, Tucson was there to dunk it down and deny KT opening up the game.
Yep. Bit unfortunate there for Deft. He felt like he had the damage to take out the Ezreal if he flashed in, but all that ended up happening was he got kited by Ezreal Zoe by himself as the Swain. That's one of the worst feelings for you guys who play a lot of Swain. I'll hold that thought as KT looking to go for the engage in the backside. They do get Tushin with the knockup, but where's the Yasuo? No follow-up engage here from KT. They do have the Mundo, though, in a bit of a bad spot here. And the Devour comes in to save his life. Just barely. Tushin once again going to save his team from nearly instant death. We'll see if Afreeca can turn this around. They're still poking. The trouble bubble is going to land on the Gragas, but he's got his own stopwatch to get out of dodge there as another crazy fight happens on the Rift.
Afreeca playing out of the mines in the last couple of fights. Meb will take the trouble bubble, but should be blocked by Mata.
Okay, they're going to taunt him in. And there are the mechanics of KT coming in, trying to get the Devour. He gets it again! Tucson, the perfect positioning, is going to be able to save his team. The Tornado coming through there from the Yasuo isn't able to get on top of Kuro in the backline, and so he does survive in the end.
If you could invest in Tucson, he's the biggest blue chip ever today. Holy crap, saving everyone. Fans go wild for the plays here. It is insane that none of the 3 members we saw focused down went down.
This is carrying your team in a different way, right? We all know the Yasuo with the 5-man knock-up, the last breath on everyone, and then he just destroys the enemy team. But this is just trying to save your team from doing dumb stuff and from getting caught. The Zoe hopping forward over the wall into so much CC. Kuro saying, I'm going to kill this guy, but, you know, obviously not. And Tucson able to save his life. Let's take another look at the replay, though.
You asked about why the Yasuo was late. Watch what happens. Gets interrupted and knocked up by Mowgli, so can't last breath at the start. Fight continues. Eventually, they just hold on to the Mundo, wanting to kill him. But Tom Kench is there again. Good positioning from Tucson. That part is standing. He pressed W. Not excited yet. Understand that. We go on from here. They try the re-engage. Last breath is down, so they can't make anything happen. This should just be the long and short of it after they blow some cooldowns. But honestly, Kuro gets greedy, trying to poke over the wall. I saw the same thing at Rift Rivals, trying to make plays that didn't need to be there. They'd already got KT to recall. But once again, it's all about reading the play. Tucson walks up. He's there again. And these low health bars have to be so frustrating for KT Rolster.
Yeah, it's really annoying for them, for sure. And it definitely does feel like League of Stopwatch once again. I think we had 3 of them blown in that last fight, so there you have it. At least this time around, a lot of people will have stopwatches that are broken now after being used. Let's take a look at the damage. UCal on the Yasuo will pick up the win.
But with Afreeca playing out of their minds, they're going even with KT. And we know extra items for KT will make these fights even stronger. So the execution needs to continue. Mowgli tries to steal, doesn't get it.
Trying to get that Ocean Drake, and now he's going to kidnap 2 people. Score getting solo. They do take it out, but look at UCal in the backline. And Def just ulting 5 members there. Kuro's still alive, but he is going to get low. Look at aiming. Goes down to Smeb alone, and Mowgli just gets caught by everyone else. The Mundo is going to get away, but that is a 1-team fight here for KT. They're still chasing the Mundo. See if this actually does work out, as it is Keen on this ridiculous pick. UCal against Keen. Keen probably wins, but he's got the rest of his team following up.
He's denying a Baron by wasting so much time, such as Mundo.
He's got his ult working.
Where does he please to go?
Someone start the music, please.
Can he buy from the enemy shop? Get in there. Buy some nice items.
Okay, I mean, he's just delaying so much time, right? He's not going to get any kills. He's not going to be able to execute himself. And meanwhile, they're looking for Smeb down here on the bottom side.
The yakety sax music sounding pretty loud, Valdez.
I can definitely hear it beginning to turn on as Spo is finally getting on the page. If they get Smeb here, that's going to be really big, because eventually the Mundo will spawn. Smeb trying to do his best. Kuro actually gets low, but he does get the job done. But with that low Zoe, KT definitely thinking about going for this Baron. They're going to start it here, it looks like.
They know the Zoe cannot get there. The Tom Kent is already walking up with no Abyssal Voyage. This should be Baron KT, so hard to contest, as his ults will be up very soon.
It's going to be up to Mowgli,
He's
really.
not spotted. He is now.
They get him now. Cask is going to miss. They're trying to get the Tauntaun in. Here comes Mowgli with the big knock-up. Def taking so much damage, and he got it! Mowgli with the huge steal in the back line, and Def goes down 2. But can UCal take everyone out? He's getting extremely low. Zoe is able to show up, and here's the Mundo. Make that 2 extra kills for Afreeca after getting the Baron, and an MVP play from Mowgli will tip the scales in Afreeca's favor.
And Afreeca Freecs are so close to reverse matchup in KT. It's the same draft that KT lost with in the previous game. And even in the late game, those misplays from KT happen again and again. And the game might just end here.
It might just. We have a big wave coming on in. So many range minions. And they have incredible poke and all the buffs on the side of Afreeca. Not sure that they're going to take this one, though. They are going to respect the Gnar and the Shen to delay it. So still a huge play in favor of Afreeca. They go ahead now. They have 3 minutes of Baron. They have 4,000 gold lead. Let's take a look at this once again.
So the cask is thrown out, thinking he will stand there. He doesn't. The Baron at 2,000 health. Because of the knocking of the heads and all the incidental damage, they continue to do damage to it. Smite doesn't work out. The Smite does register that time. Score too early.
Yep.
So many times the story in his career, and then no one has any damage left to threaten Kuro at all. All the health bars are registered. KT make the all-in play, and because time was wasted on both sides, they couldn't outnumber because Smeb was in the death chamber.
That's definitely one that Mowgli is going to put on his resume. He's like, hey, I'm an up-and-coming jungler. Take a look at this play. He does everything, basically. He's got the perfect positioning, dodges the cask, dodges the taunt from the Smeb, hops over the wall, knocks heads together after his own knockup, ults them, and while he's ulting, he outsmites Score, who's just sitting there. And, you know, just trying to get the timing right. So this guy, the younger jungler, up against old man Score, he wins the mechanical smite fight that time around, and it's going to give Afreeca a gigantic advantage in this game.
It was also a really high-risk Baron to even attempt. They didn't have all their plans. They missed the cast. And from there, it became the 50-50 that the game shouldn't have been. There are item timings where KT are on paper super set up to beat Afreeca Freecs. We're basically at that point. And Afreeca picking up a Baron is not part of the script for KT Rolster.
The push coming on in here. They don't have the Banner command anymore, but it doesn't look like they need it. A poke comp that has the Baron is one of the strongest moments for the composition. Smeb trying to get into his Mega Gnar form, but Score's going to get locked up here. Tornado coming forward from Yukal, coming from the side though here. Able to knock up two people there. Kuro getting solo, and Yasuo is able to take out two with the help of Smeb, and the rest of Afreeca is on the run here. Aiming, not able to kill anyone on the back foot, and he is going to go down with two other members. Afreeca, though, looking for the mid lane. Take a look at Mowgli.
Gonna lose at least one. Here it goes, next to start one down.
Yeah, Mowgli not going to go for it, just going to let that one fly. One Nexus turret is going to go down. It looks like the second one will be saved for now. But 3 kills going over to Afreeca, getting a little bit aggressive onto that top turret, and KT with a nice play.
And these are the fights that KT have to win. They should win. They have so many ways to set up the last breath. The Gnar hasn't been able to be big in fights apart from when we saw Smeb zone out aiming in the fight around the Drake. The first cast and the Q are ignored. Cast goes in, no ult. Q goes in, it's not the right time. They come from the flank, nice taunt into the Gnar ultimate. The last breath for the instant double kill. The play onto aiming is difficult as well. Watch what happens, taunt, flash, cleanse, but the never move is predicting the flash afterwards. Excellent play by KT Rolster to pick up those kills, and yet, as we can see in the picture-in-picture, all they're gonna get is now a mid lane turret.
Yeah, depth, you know, he's had his moments. He's definitely part of the reason why KT has, you know, some mistakes in their games, but tonight he is on point. Looked decent in game number 1 on the Ezreal, is doing a lot more work, though, on the Swain this time around. The most damage is going to go over to aiming, actually. He is definitely in a fantastic spot for an Ezreal here in this game, but
he's also a marksman, and
yeah.
in the late game, marksmen have the range advantage and plenty of people to auto attack.
The rest of his team died in front of him, so couldn't do much after that.
It's so hard for KT to get those fights on even ground. It's only happening because of Afreeca trying to utilize the Baron that they should never have been in position to take. So a lot of things have coalesced into KT getting the fights that Afreeca should be trying to avoid. Shoe on the other foot for the millionth time we've said this game, in both draft and now in gameplay and tempo. And suddenly we're at a point where there's 2,000 gold lead for the side of Afreeca, but just like we saw KT struggle with, how do aiming and Kuro come together to kill any of the frontliners from KT before all these bruisers do their dirty work?
Yep, that Gragas not getting as much farm as he did in game number 1 because he is in the jungle, comparatively to the top lane. Notice Smeb right now at 381 CS, has a ton of those items. Just going to devour the Mundo over the wall. Might as well. And it's really going to come down to positioning and engage here as we do have this Elder Drake up and ready to be taken. KT would love to get this objective with already 3 Elemental Drakes, but Afreeca going to try to not let that happen.
see how Afreeca problem solve this. It's so tricky to win a team fight against KT's Calm. There's so many different knockups you have to respect, and Yasuo is decked out, and then some. Bloodthirster continue going in the fight. Watching their flanks here, we know that Swain is above them. Not the biggest, almost threatening of members, but if he can get to the backline with his ultimate, we know how much work Def can do.
Spotted him there with the blue trinket, so they know he's there
9,000. Remember, Mowgli can walk up and then, of course, rejoin very quickly with the elastic slingshot. Everyone's hearts are in their mouths. Will we be going to a game 3, or will Afreeca be able to navigate this to a victory? Score hit by the trouble bubble.
It's definitely one way to think about it, but Afreeca, they're so fine to just delay. Look at that massive wave up in the top side. That's a wave big enough to take out the turret by itself. They get to sleep on a Def, and he nearly dies in the back line. Look at Mowgli trying to get onto Def, but the stem United will keep him alive for now. And now Keen just going 1v3, aiming and choosing to go over the wall. They find Mana in the back line. They take him out, and the Mundo just does not die. All of the focus there from KT. Now they're trying to stop Yukali, who's going to get the Mundo finally. Gonna dodge that tornado now, is aiming, but he finally does go down. And the fight, we predicted it would go to KT, but look at that top lane. Looks like it should go down, this inhibitor, even with the TP coming in.
He has to TP in, otherwise it could just kill the last Nexus turret. Smap goes back, he's happy he has a high health bar, could have died to minions if he was on low health. He'll tank them up, but KT crucially cannot end the game after getting 4 kills at 40 minutes.
It's definitely a game that feels very one-sided to KT at this point in time. We talked about the drafts and the picks, the compositions, and now potentially Elder Drake, unless Mowgli wants to be the hero again. But the knockup comes in. Tucson, once again, he's right there. He knows where he has to be. Mowgli's still alive.
Not on a ward either.
They
Only now, he's in vision.
Yep, they have the vision.
And Score says nope.
Look at that. He's like, no, I can't do it. He doesn't have the smite. Look at the cooldown, 20 seconds left. He says, no, we cannot take the Drake, and that is massive in this game.
As a 31-year-old, there are moments when you realize your age is catching up to you. Score is having one of those moments here. He's not going to take another smite battle. No 50-50s to happen. But that's not just a 50-50, no harm, no foul. Afreeca get inside track into Baron control because KT won't keep Afreeca around the Drake.
Yeah. And just for a reference, that's Papa, who's 31, not
yes.
Score. Not yet. We'll see if he's still around at 31. That would be a massive feat. But now the inside track into the Baron. Look at the damage from Yasuo. He's just beginning to get out of control. He can take out the Mundo. He can take out anyone. Whoever's in front of him, he will go for. And as long as he's not in danger, he will absolutely take the fight. They try to go for the Baron now.
They're starting up the Baron, and because we see in the top lane, Deft is there, he has teleport, but wards here are pretty minimal, so he's going to walk up anyway. Afreeca themselves disengage off the Baron. It's all about the position you get by starting an objective, not just, hey, we'll rush it down.
Scheme on such a knife's edge. You said it best before. How is Afreeca going to just figure this game out? To take the win from KT, to sweep the rug out from under their feet. Definitely will feel that way. They do take the win at this point in the game. But now KT with the inside track onto the Baron this time. Trying to just clear out some of the vision. Trying to not get caught here.
Game is so much more tense at 41 minutes than the drafts would suggest, because Afreeca were able to blow it open after a KT mistake and pick up that first Baron and take down these inhibitors that have forced so many movements from KT. KT just want to play the 5v5, but the side lanes are what have really been shutting them down. A Score is desperate to set up a last breath.
He's just running at them. He's saying, come at me, bro. I want to fight right now. And, well, it's going to be hard. Look at the bottom lane. Look at the top lane. Spo TV observers, they're on top of it. They know that with the super minions pushing in the top side, plus the big bottom side wave, it's going to be really hard for KT to stop both. And I said Def with the TP to the top side, and the Shen with the Stand United into the bot side. See if any steal can come in. The
it's
TP
very late.
It's going to come in now, but it doesn't look like Score's in position, and Top Kent with the second smite. He's going to get him, and aiming is so low, and he is going to be taken out. The kidnap here from the Zac isn't going to mean anything. Tucson just trying to save Keen's life. They get the Baron, but 2 kills do go over to KT. Make that 3, and look at the main base. The turret in the bot side goes out, and look at the Nexus.
The Winions aren't going to end the game, but Keen is walking up. He wants another inhibitor.
And you know what? I mean, look at the Nexus. It's open for now. KT, not all of them are backing. UCal still pushing. Keen, I'm not sure about this one.
He can't do it. This dodge field also is stopping him. Keen, this is just a mistake.
Okay, definitely a moment.
So remember, he doesn't have any allies. That's why they're trying to do it. He was trying to delay. He gets 2 people. The minions are still going. Can they end the game? 15 seconds till anyone respawns from Afreeca.
Doesn't look like they have a big enough minion wave. It's just that one lonely ranged minion, and that's going to be it for the push for KT. They stop it, but they lose so much. The Baron.
How hard a job is it for Keen to be told, run at the enemy Nexus, draw at least 2, the game won't end. KT going to turn onto the Elder. Keen was just trying to stop 5 people from ending the game. Now KT want to find an Elder. This will be a 3-stack.
It's going to be big. Aiming, trying to do his best, steal that one. Not going to come through, and this time Score with no pressure. He's going to pick up the smite. And what a crazy one we've landed ourselves in. Game number 1 was pretty straightforward, but Afreeca, even if they don't win this one, they've made it so much more interesting compared to KT just getting smashed in game number 1. The Nexus is open. The inhibitor's down on the top side. Let's see exactly what they can do in this game.
Mundo's Remember Me play will never be forgotten. Run at the enemy Nexus just to stop the game ending around you. Inhibitors are respawning, now just respawn for KT. Overlay will drop, thank you SpoTV. 3 minutes 50 on the mid lane inhibitor from Afreeca. Again, when we see the good old honest 5v5s, none of that backdooring, none of those minions, KT will win. But Afreeca know that. They're a very smart team. They have the Baron buff on Kuro to side push, and it's the 6th man of the minions that have been able to make KT never able to close the game on those one team fights. We're getting to just absurdly strong times. Look at UCal here. He has a Bloodthirst. He has Guardian Angel. He even has the amped damage from the Elder. He is so amped for a 5v5 that Afreeca are not willing to give him.
This is that moment in solo queue. The enemy Yasuo 16-0. You just say, we cannot fight him, so you try to split push. You just try to do whatever you can to avoid. Usually in solo queue, someone dies anyway and the game ends. But this is not what's going to happen to Afreeca. They've been playing the macro game fantastically. They've been making the waves push for their team and getting big objectives that way. But now we're reaching a moment where KT, all of their inhibitors have spawned. They have protection on the Nexus. It's going to be much harder to backdoor. And with no big objective, we'll see exactly how Afreeca's going to avoid a fight for another 5 minutes.
Oh boy. You can take a deep breath now. The game is very unlikely to spring into life in a half second as KT is saying, let's play 3 lanes. Mata can play a side lane on the Shen with Baron, a lot stronger than without Baron, but he's just slowly trying to ensure that the top lane minion wave is going to end the game against the side of KT. Taking deep breaths here, Mata, slowly but surely trying to push up grouped minions. He's not going to be able to push them quickly, but it is going to be a big grouping, so it's going to be a very strong push when those minions come forward. KT finally able to play multiple lanes at this point in the game. For once, if they do get a 5v5, the minions aren't going to force them to recall.
Some attack pings coming in here, probably from Smeb or Score, trying to lead their team down on the bottom side. They have the big push happening here. And it looks like they will just take the inhibitor. That's what I was talking about. Afreeca, they just don't want to fight, right? They don't feel like they can without significant poke. So how can they avoid a fight for that long? The question is, or rather the answer is, you let your inhibitors die. You just get pushed in and you say, no, we will not fight you. Problem
is that the enemy team is a team fight team, and even though you might say eventually you'll be on the enemy Nexus, doesn't matter. Chasing on Mata, trying to kill him here, but going to be able to get away. There's been so many moments this game. It seemed like an obvious MVP performance from Tucson if it ended at 35 minutes. It did not. This could be another moment. Score looking for a ultimate from UCal, waiting for UCal to get in range. It won't happen. We saw Mundo going for the Remember Me play on the next. To me, it looked like a mistake from the start, but actually looking at the death timers and remembering how late it was just, you cannot end the game if I run straight at the enemy Nexus. This game has certainly been more than it seemed at first glance. We're seeing KT push in top, take their time. They know the game could end on the next play. Because they have that team fight lead, they're willing to be just a little bit more patient.
Yep. They're just waiting on it, waiting for that big moment. You know, they have 2 inhibitors down compared to 0, but look at this, the rotations here from Afreeca trying to get on top of Smeb, and wow, the damage coming out of Kuro now. The Stand United onto him, but they're going to pop his GA. Coming from behind here is UCal and Deft, but it's 3v5 right now. Smeb is going to go down, and all of a sudden this fight is going one way. That's toward Afreeca, but Deft in the backline is going to be slapped. UCal trying to go 1v4. We'll see if he can do it. He's going to get on top of aiming, flashing forward the big devour.
How many can get?
Both of them go down. He's still got his GA. He's super tanky, but that's a double kill already for UCal. And it doesn't look like anyone else from Afreeca can stop them as KT finally get that team fight. It was looking good for Afreeca, but KT gonna win it in a big way.
Daddy UCal's gonna win this game for them. No one can take him. Send 2, send 3, find 6. You won't beat him. They're looking to close it here, KT.
Yasuo just way too far ahead. Even gonna knock up the Mundo and look for another kill here. But you can tell that Keen and Mowgli just trying to delay this one. Doesn't look like it's gonna happen. The double taunts coming on in. KT's still thinking about a fight. All this CC and UCal, he's finally had enough. He is gonna turn onto Keen and onto Mowgli, and that's gonna do it. The fans finally realize it. As Papa Smithy has 30 seconds ago, this is going to go over to KT, and we will have a game number 3 onto the Rift.
Every game, baby, we're going 3. This will be the 5th in a row. We're going to game number 3, and with KT and Afreeca, with plenty of beef regionally from Rift rivals, everyone said it should be KT in the final game. It wasn't. They saw game 1 of this series, and they said, okay, maybe it should have been Afreeca. Suddenly, it's all up in the air. Both these teams are not where they want to be. They are not rank 1. They are not rank 2. They are still playing with playoffs a long way away, but still on the horizon. KT versus Afreeca, just as hype as it ever was. And UCal, he folds his hands and says, the job is not yet done.
Seems like he is sensing maybe a Yasuo ban coming into this next one, or a Yasuo pick. It's gonna really make game number 3's draft really interesting, because twice in a row, the team that drafts this Zoe, Ezreal, Tom Kench composition loses as it gets to the late game, and they could not push it early enough. And so KT are going to have to ask themselves, do we draft ourselves into the same hole and trust that we can push it ahead in game 3, or do we try to mix it up?
I don't think Afreeca will be able to ban the normal 3 bans on red side, because KT will be returning to blue, and that means we could see some interesting champions slip through. Well, we see a Nocturne. It's been left open a couple of times this week. Could we see the new Aatrox and say, can you actually play it? There's no hotfix, it's not as strong. We're going to watch the last replay. This definitely looks like KT are going to lose on a conventional draft. You think, oh, all right, Smeb dies for free. He's out of position. Now UCal's going to die as well. But remember, UCal has Bloodthirster. He is so utterly farmed on the Yasuo. Late game Yasuo is a terror. And UCal sees everyone on the enemy team and dispatches them summarily, one by one.
Waited for the Zac to hop into him. Knocks them both up. Gets that last breath perfectly. Aiming. Unfortunately, gets a little bit too close to the sun, to the Yasuo, and just could not fight up against him. No Tom Kench was going to help him out that late into the game, and 2 long ones. They have a bit of a longer game here, but guys, we are going to go to another 11-minute break before we do go into game number 3, so hold on to your seats. This has been